Hello, hello, and welcome in. We are here. We are looking at the ceiling. Uh, should adjust. I always have to adjust that. I should adjust that before I start. So, I was asking. We're gonna cover the impetus for today's project. Uh, you'll remember last week I picked up some cheap mangoes. They were 33. They were three for $1. So I picked up some mangoes, and I was asking people what I should do with mangoes. Last week we made or last Saturday, over the weekend, we made a mango noodle stir fry with that pork belly that was super delicious. But I only used one mango for that. In fact, I've used a bit too much for that, and I had a bunch of leftovers. But I've got a whole other mango, and I was asking people what I should do with mango, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, make mango sticky rice, make dessert things." One of my faithful viewers suggested pasta sauce, mango-based pasta sauce. Felix, you are first. You are forever first. Once again. Mango-based pasta sauce. So I'm going to attempt to make a sauce fit to be served on pasta using this mango, as a primary base component. Additionally, the pork belly had a marinade that I then poured into the pan with it and used as a braising liquid. Normally, don't save your marinades. Once you've marinated your thing, you got to discard it because it's been soaking in raw meat. That one was in the oven for 2 hours. It's definitely as sterilized as the meat at that point. So I saved the braising liquid, which came with about that much rendered out pork fat because it was a fatty pork belly. Um, and I would like to use this in my sauce as well as a component. Now you'll remember this was a combination of what was all in here. The main ingredients were soy sauce and honey. There was also ginger, paprika, cayenne pepper, some additional sugar. Was there additional sugar? I think it was some molasses. There was miso. So this is sort of a sweet Asian thing. The spicy elements actually are very mild in here. They are drowned out by the sweetness. So I'll give this a taste and see if we can't build it. I would like to use this in there. I might end up just using the pork fat. Um, since I've got it, and it's rich and flavorful, and it's got all that rendered pork fat in there, I think I'm going to try to shoot to include that. We've also got, and I have been eating away at it, but I'm eating it slowly because it's very, very fatty pork belly. It's in my container here. It's the bottom. The bottom doesn't look very good. Let's pop over to the counter. Oop. I'm in fact not starting. This guy here is the fatty pork belly. It looks a little bit less appealing cold, but it reheats beautifully. And in fact, reheating it in a pan gives this lovely crispy surface and edges on it. So if I'm already trying to include that flavor profile in my sauce, we could potentially use this either as a element of the sauce, although I think it might get lost. I'm I'm tempted to just, and this probably, since I'm tempted and it sounds like a good idea, I'll just do it. Take a couple slices of this, crisp them up, and serve them on top of the finished pasta. But we need to explore some flavors to determine exactly where we're going to land with this. I went back looking for more pork belly because this was such a delicious outcome and so easy to make, and nobody has it. I know it's a common restaurant ingredient. One of the local grocery stores has whole pork bellies, as in an entire pig size, for like $100 each, which would be fun for a big party, but It's a bit much to use on the small scale, and I don't know that it would fit in my oven. I don't know why they just had these beautiful little sections just one time and then got rid of them. I would get this cut all the time if it was available. It's so easy to use. Probably shouldn't get it all the time because it is very fatty and not good for you. But it's so delicious and so easy to prepare. And you can throw all different flavors you want at it. Anyways, we're gonna try to use up that. I'm trying to use up things. This is going to be one of the first projects that I didn't go out specifically to buy additional ingredients for in quite a while. I'm using only things that I've already got on hand, such as this mango. So I guess that's the plan. I got some extra small onions this time. There's weird small spring onions showing up. I dug around and found ones that weren't the smallest, but like these baby little onions. It's an onion that's smaller than a garlic. And of course, we also have this gigantic shallot. It's bigger than an onion. Weird stuff. Anyways, step one, because I want to use this, we got to get in there. Now, I didn't filter that, so the pork fat has got a lot of the drippings and flavorings mixed in. Let's get out a pot, because I think either way we go with this, we're going to want that pork fat in a pot. Big pot, small pot, medium pot, this pot. I also found another thing that I was looking for. We could incorporate it, but it might be too much. A little while back, I found, okay, going back years, I once made my own paneer first time after encountering it at an Indian restaurant. I thought it was great. Paneer is a firm Indian cheese that doesn't melt, so you can toast it on the, you can grill it, you can fry it in a pan, it'll brown up and get crispy on the edges. You can throw it into stews and stuff and it'll stay as chunks instead of melting into it. And ages ago, I made my own. I'm getting off topic, but I'm just going to keep rambling. Ages ago, I made my own paneer, and I made 2 attempts. The first attempt was a success. I got a firm cheese that I was able to grill on an open flame on a charcoal grill, and it took color and it didn't melt into the thing. It was great. It stuck a little bit, but I think it would have stuck. It wasn't probably perfect, but it was good enough that it really held up. Second time, complete failure. The moment I put it on heat, it melted into a puddle. As far as I know, I did the same thing with both of them. And I did that because I couldn't find paneer for purchase anywhere. We don't have an Indian grocery anywhere around me. I'm just talking. I should probably have my face up here. We don't have an Indian grocery anywhere around me, and the mainstream stores just didn't carry it. So if I wanted it, I had to make my own. And it wasn't that expensive, but it was a bit pricey to make it because you had to buy nicer milk. You had to buy unhomogenized, non-ultra pasteurized milk, which is a little more expensive because it doesn't have a good shelf life. But if I wanted it, I could make it myself. Way back when I started this channel, I did an experiment with halloumi, which is a similar cheese that is firm and doesn't melt when you heat it, so you can get it to take a brown surface. And I have seen that in stores around here, and it's a lot more expensive. And it actually is more economical, approximately as economical to make it myself as to buy it. But then I found a local Wisconsin brand. No, this is imported. It's a Wisconsin brand importing it, though. Paneer, Indian cheese. And it's very affordable. And it also has a very long shelf life. Says it'll be good until November. And I got one of these just to try it out, see how it was, and it was fantastic. And then I went back to get more, and they were completely sold out. So I went back later, and I found some more. So that was a long, rambling story telling you that I have paneer. Maybe I'll include some paneer. Long, rambling story. Long, rambling story. Very little bearing on what we're actually doing here. Let's... Ooh. The goo underneath has... Whoa, that flavor. It's salty, sweet, savory. It's got a lot of meatiness to it. I don't know if you can quite see the once you get through the layer of fat, the underlying part has gelled, but not like super solid, which kind of makes sense because the pork belly does not have a lot of collagen to form the gel out of. But there must have been just enough because I didn't put anything else in there that would gel unless it's just a case of having cooked enough of the water out of it that the sugars have pulled it back together into a jelly. I suppose that's possible. It's interesting that it's so thick. I thought it was going to be much wetter down there. It kind of jiggles and then goes back to where it was. Fascinating. I wish this was in a smaller container so I could really pop that cap off. Putting it in this jar was a mistake. It was because I had used all my lids on these. Should have put it in one of these. Because then I could have gotten in there with a butter knife and popped that fat cap off. Ooh, there's a spice in there too. I like that. I like that. We're going to start by gently melting the pork fat in that pan. And I'm going to... I want to get this completely out of here, and I want to keep that fat layer intact, or at least kind of separated. Whenever you've got renderings or drippings or something from... Ooh, it came out. It came out in one big chunk. Well, perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. It's just a little bit on the bottom. Whenever you've got drippings from cooking meat, like renderings and sauces and stuff, I recommend saving them, hanging on to them. For one thing, letting them rest will cause the fats to separate out, and you'll get... Now this one's got some bunch of the marinade still stuck to it, but you'll get one of these like a puck of just rendered out fat, and that right there, aside from the flavoring, is lard because it was rendered pork belly. Flavor on this is fantastic, by the way. This might be too overpowering and concentrated to use for what I want to do with it. But that's fine because I can save this as well. And we can put it in a smaller container that's easier to get out of. And as you can see, it's already turned back to a liquid just from warming up to room temperature. But this has all of the flavor drippings from the meat still in it, as well as all the flavors from the sauce and the marinade still in it. So it would be a shame to throw it away as long as you can be sure that you've cooked it and it's not raw, which is why you would never do this with a marinade unless that marinade has gone through the heat the way the finished dish has. So we're probably going to use some of that. Set this jar aside for cleaning. The jar, I misjudged how much of it was going to be there. That jar was much too large for the amount that I got. Hang on to this. Hang on to this. We're going to hang on to these things. I wanted to melt the fat in the pan on a we're on medium low, just to see how much I got, because I often have a hard time judging volumes of solid fats. So I put them in a bit and let them melt to see how much I've got, because I have a much better eye for judging the liquid fats. So we've got maybe a tablespoon and a half of our pork, of our flavored lard, is essentially what this is. So I'm going to throw in a little bit more. And then we're going to save the rest of it. Now this one has a lot of sauce attached to it, and that will reduce its shelf life. But if you have a bunch of drippings from something and you get them nice and separated out, the purified fats will keep a very long time. Keep them in an airtight container to prevent them from getting oxidized, and they will keep for a long time and be super useful. People do this with bacon drippings, but you can do it with any meat that generates a bunch of fat, or really anything. If you're cooking a bunch of coconut and the fat all renders out, you can save the coconut fat. It's just most vegetables don't have a high concentration of fat that you then cook out of them. So we're going to make a roux. We're going to start here by making a roux. I've decided I want this sauce to be partially thickened. And do I want a dark roux? Probably don't want a dark roux. In fact, I probably don't need it to be really going just yet. I'm going to throw the flour in there and get it started, but I've turned the heat off now. Hi! Welcome in. I've just been rambling on about meat drippings and Indian cheeses. Quickly just combine this. to get the starches started. I did a mango noodle stir fry, which is different. This is an Italian pasta sauce featuring mango. Because I have mango and we've got to use it up. Speaking of which, we're going to have to get into that mango. Mangoes are in season, or at least they were a week ago when I bought the mango. I was asking what I should do with mangoes, and I was given a suggestion, and we're rolling with it. And I am in fact using the drippings, the leftover braising liquid / marinade, and the fat drippings from the pork belly, which is here. So a lot of the elements that I've pulled out for use today are, in fact, not just similar, but literally the same. But I'm going for something different. We're trying to use up some leftovers. That's part of the thing here. Leftover ingredients as opposed to leftover finished dishes. But yeah, you are absolutely correct. We did mangoes recently. So probably won't talk a ton about the mango itself unless people have questions, because it's going to be largely the same spiel as last time. Mango is, of course, much riper because I've had this one for now a week longer than I had the other one. The reason I threw some flour in with the fat there is because I was reading about mango. I went and looked up to see if mangoes have enough pectin to firm up. And my reading suggested that they do, but it is almost entirely in the skins, which I don't really want to have to cook down the skins to extract the pectin. So I'm choosing to thicken my sauce with starch instead. We're getting rid of the skins. Also, noodles and pasta are not the same thing. As any pretentious foodie will tell you. Let's see, these guys, a little brown spot in there, which is a sign that I'm getting to these probably just in time. I got to get these out of their skins. Oop. Don't worry, we'll be getting unreasonably creative before you know it. My Easter plans have already caused people to recoil in disgust. I just realized today that April Fool's is coming up. These mangoes are extremely ripe to the point where the this spoon, it's puncturing the skins. Skins. So I don't think this mango could have survived much longer. I want it to be cut up pretty small, too. Because my hope is that it will break down as we cook it, so that I can hit it with a masher or potentially my stick blender to ensure that it's not sauce with mango chunks, but is a mango-based sauce. I would like the mango to be the largest component, but I'm still going for a savory. We're going for an overall savory here. We're not shooting for a sweet result, which might be the biggest challenge here. I feel like we're in a realm where we could do that. Mangoes are very sweet, but they're also acidic. And I think I'm gonna try to leverage the acidity. Because tomatoes are very sugary, but they're also acidic. So it doesn't seem impossible. We have an ad about to start. This might have been a good use for the food processor. I could have jammed these mango halves into it and had it come out as a mango paste. I'm going to snack on that piece. It's hard to not snack on mango when you got it. It's so tasty. We covered that in the hot takes last time. The tastiness of mango. Okay. Wash my hands because they are very sticky. I'm going to get our various mise place before we start, because I want to keep an eye on the sauce as we're building it, so I don't end up burning random bits. Because I'm known to do that. I'm not going to wash the cutting board just yet, but I am going to give it a wipe down so it's not quite so juicy. Let's just get out all of my ingredient bowls right away. So the standard Italian sauce starts with the same basic elements that you would put in a mirepoix: onion, celery, and carrot. And then they usually include garlic. And that forms the sofrito that is a flavorful base for a lot of Italian dishes. And then if you go to the South, the U.S. South and northern Mexico, you will find the variant on that called the Trinity, which swaps out the carrot for bell pepper. And I, despite all of my training myself and chefing, not a gigantic fan of carrots still, to this day. As a kid, I absolutely hated them. They were my least favorite vegetable. I kind of got over myself, but they're still not, don't reach for them. So having them as one of the core elements of the standard aromatic vegetables, not a huge fan of that. So I'm happy to swap out the carrot for a bell pepper. Probably don't need that whole bell pepper for this. And we're just giving this a... Oh, this is a weird onion. The layers are very thin. The paper was very stuck on, but then the layers weren't really... The layers tried to separate below that. These weird small onions. Moral of my story is, I don't think I'm adding carrot to this. I'm adding some bell pepper instead. So again, we're taking it away from the Italian tradition. Okay. I'm making weird hybrid food. Ultimately, I'm making weird hybrid food. Because I don't respect culinary boundaries. Drop off my onion papers real quick. Let's find out how much celery I've got. Plenty of celery. We're only going to take one medium rib for this. Celery, on the other hand, I like. One of my friends repeatedly describes celery as just there to add bulk. And I disagree. I think the flavors that it brings are very, very nice. I just don't particularly like the long, stringy fibers, so I don't like eating it straight. But when you slice it through those long, stringy fibers, the only negative element of celery disappears. Okay, well, maybe little bits of it popping off the edge are falling on the floor are a negative bit as well, but Gonna have to sweep the floor again. There's pieces of celery. And a bell pepper. This bell pepper was already a little bit wrinkly when I got it, and it was the least wrinkly one that they had available. I think we are coming out of wherever the greenhouse bell peppers season is. And they're not in local season yet. And I always cut, the pith is edible. The pith is edible, but I always cut it out. It has a weird texture and is often slightly bitter. In a hot pepper, it's where the hot is the most concentrated in order to protect the seeds, which are attached to the pith. In a sweet pepper like this, there's no heat, so no concern there. It just has a little bit of a unpleasant texture and a hint of unwanted bitterness. That didn't work. That didn't work. Of course, the downside of using bell pepper instead of carrot is that you don't get that white, green, orange combo. You get white, green, green, or well, I suppose if you used an orange pepper, you could get this, you still get the orange in there. But you lose out on the color of a carrot. Although orange carrots are the worst carrots anyways. You should be eating purple carrots for nutrition and, in my opinion, yellow carrots for flavor. I think the yellow carrots have a better flavor than the standard orange. Okay. We have our initial sofrito. Let's do some garlic while we're still in mise en place mode. Garlic. 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 Excuse me. I love this thing. I wish I knew where it came from so I could recommend it to people because it's great. It's one of those devices that just does the thing that it's meant to do. It solves a problem, and it does it so well that it's just this revelation of, oh yeah, peeling a garlic clove, 2 seconds. And people have asked me, where'd you get that? What is that? And I have to tell them, it was a gift. I have no idea where it comes from, and it has no labeling on it. It has no branding on it at all. It's just a silicone tube. Wherever you are, silicone tube garlic peeler company, call me. We're going to pulverize the garlic with our microplane today. Get it really mashed up. Because I think that will help us draw this away from sweet towards savory. The thing we're missing, the one thing we're going to be missing in using mango in place of tomato is the glutamates. Mangoes and tomatoes are both acidic, but they're different acids. Tomatoes have a lot of glutamic acid, whereas mangoes have a lot of ascorbic acid. Ascorbic acid's good for you, and it gives you that nice sort of bright flavor, but it doesn't interact with salt the way glutamic acid does, which means you don't get that lovely umami development that you get from a tomato when you add salt to a tomato. The sodium chloride combines with the glutamic acid to form monosodium glutamate, which we all know as a delicious, savory flavor. So I might have to add some of my own. But I also added, I'm also thinking of adding some of this drippings, and the drippings here are full of miso and soy sauce, both of which have natural glutamates in them. So we might be able to pull it off without having to add MSG. I just don't want to drown out the flavor of the mango, and I can't pull it back if I let it go too far because I don't have another mango. Garlic, sofrito, mango, parsley, but parsley a bit later. Salt. Get the sauce on the go and cooking before I bother with any of the other major elements. Drippings, pork fat, and our starter roux, which has solidified a bit because I turned the heat off so I wouldn't burn it while I was being distracted. It smells already very good because there was some of the... I gotta come up with a name for that stuff. It's not a marinade. Well, it started out as a marinade, then I used it as a braising liquid, and then it combined with the pork drippings. So it's a gravy, right? It's a gravy. It's really thick. It's the consistency of gravy. It tastes like delicious things. It's salty enough we might not have to add any salt to this at all. Just rely on the gravy here. Okay, I'm gonna let that start sizzling before I add anything else. And we're going to add the sofrito mix first and try to get it really sweated down before I add the mango, because the mango is going to add a lot more liquid because it's a much juicier fruit than these guys. I should get a better tool for it as well. Since there's a little bit of that gravy in the fat already, we're not going to be able to judge this roux by color. It's already very brown. It definitely hasn't cooked long enough to have achieved that brownness. That's just the pork drippings, the gravy. I'm getting out a plate to put that on. Okay. So, I've been rambling for around about 50 minutes. How's everybody else's things going? We had a very warm day. As you can see, I'm wearing short sleeves. We had a very warm day today here. Got up to 40. 42, I think. We didn't even need you don't even need a jacket. That warm. Cripe's sake. I saw someone out in shorts and flip-flops yesterday. Basil. Basil would get us in that flavor profile. The dry stuff. That's what I haven't added yet. That's what I haven't pulled out yet, is the various dry seasonings. Is my grinder still damp? Yes, but I think it'll dry out if I let it get some air. Our roux is bubbling, so I'm going to add our sofrito mix to it. Get that stirred around. And I just said I probably didn't have to add any salt. I'm gonna add some salt to it because it will help it sweat out and really cook down. To just add some straight salt. The salt will draw the moisture out of the vegetables, where it can then easily evaporate away. Or combine with the roux and form more of a sauce at the bottom. I'm looking at things I want to add, and I'm concerned about pulling this, because I'm trying to shoot for that Italian-ish profile, but we're definitely trending tropical. So, tropical part of Italy. I've got tomato paste handy if it comes down to it, and this is just too far from where I'm looking looking for it. We can potentially just shoot some tomato paste in there, but I would like to avoid putting tomatoes in this at all. It just feels like I shouldn't, because it'll I'm worried it'll drown it out. I don't know about actual Italian cuisine. I'm just because we're making a sauce, because I'm making a mango sauce in an Italian, using an Italian method. But then this marinade gravy stuff it's giving me strong, like, Korean vibes. Although it doesn't have that bite. It just has there's a concentration of sweetness and savoriness. But I think we can work with that. You know, if I left this in here long enough to caramelize the onions, which would require a little bit more oil and a slightly lower temperature. Definitely already lost quite a bit of volume from when I initially put it in. Oh, there's lots of Italian dishes without tomatoes. They just aren't well known. Like, tomatoes are from America. Italian people were eating food in Italy long before they ever made contact with America and got tomatoes. And even after contact and tomatoes, there's things. Carbonara has no tomatoes in it. For example. But I want this stuff to cook down and really soften up. I don't want crunchy bits of onion or pepper in my finished result. Oh, thank you for the moisten. Moist. So this guy, today's project, I think, is going to be a little bit slow moving because I'm building a sauce. Sauces tend to be a little bit of a slower burn in general. We might end up adding some water at the vent. If you want, here's a trick. Here's a trick I know. I didn't come up with it, but I have I understand why it works. If you want to try caramelizing onions and you're worried about burning them and you're worried about having this sort of long, slow cook where you're constantly tending it, put some water in there. As long as the water is boiling, the onions will never get hot enough to brown. They'll only get up to the boiling temperature. But they'll still be expressing their sugars and developing that flavor of the caramelized onions. Although in my case, I had a roux in there, so it immediately thickened up the water I added into a sauce. A little bit more water, since I did forget that roux would cause the whole thing to thicken. I'm not saying boil your onions, but like if your onions dry out when you're trying to caramelize them, add a little bit of water to the pan to slow their roll. Now, that way you don't have to be quite so fussy with it. I think I added too much water on that second pass, so we're turning the temperature back up a little bit, and I want to bring it back to a boil now because I got to get. I am ultimately going to boil these a bit because I need to get some of that water off of there. In fact, we're going to crank it. The time of ads approacheth. Good time for me to be doing basically nothing. Okay, that's enough of a quick blast of heat to get us back to bubbling. If you're working with an electric stove, get to know it. Understand how things heat up. What I just did there was I turned it up to full temperature, full blast, because I added some water, and the water brought the temperature down and it stopped bubbling. But I don't want this to be boiling at full blast. So the moment, so it was only there for a moment to get the heat up. And then as soon as I heard the sauce start to just start to simmer at the bottom from the extra heat, turned it back down to where I wanted it to be at low medium. So it'll pick up that heat and it'll start bubbling, but it won't have this super hard blasting heat on it long enough for the bottom to scorch or for the thing to get to a full rolling boil. And I timed that out pretty well, in part because I have taken the time, gotten to know my pan, gotten to know my stove. When I cook in an unfamiliar kitchen, I burn things more often because I'm less familiar with especially if it's a different kind of cooker. I burn things more often because I'm less familiar with the nuances of their particular equipment. That roux at the bottom is very much causing this to be much thicker than I was expecting. I overshot that. I probably should have added half as much flour as I did. Probably should have added half as much flour as I did. Oh, well. I don't know why I brought that over here. I don't need it yet. And it's just going to be in the way. I just feel like I should do something, but really I'm doing the thing that needs to be done right now, which is tending the sauce. sort of a. This is why you have a saucier in a professional kitchen. They make the sauces because the sauces tend to be just as much labor as the dish that they go on, often more. Um, and having dedicated saucier is not just a convenience, but it's vital to the operation of a professional kitchen in a fine restaurant. Keep tweaking the temperature too. Oh. So, what are you having for dinner? What's on the table? What's on the menu? I always love to hear about other people's food adventures as well. I'm gonna start assembling some dry spices while I wait for that to bubble down a bit. Gets out some basil. Drying my own basil was one of the greatest ideas I ever had. Because it tastes nearly fresh. It was dirt cheap compared to buying dried basil. It was like $5 for 4 basil seedlings, something like that. Wound up with somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 cups of dried, post-dried basil when I was done with it. And they're in nice whole leaves, so I can portion them out. I can crush them up as I need them. They haven't been pre-crushed up. They tend to be they taste much fresher, even though they're dried, than the store-bought stuff. They don't survive the winter around here. I can't just plant them and have basil forever. I've tried bringing them through the winter in my front window, and they just suffer and end up dying before they get through. So you guys are looking at the sauce while I'm working on powders over here. This powdered here. Why is my camera so wonky today? This powder here is several large pinches of the dried basil I was just talking about, some shakes of dry oregano, some garlic powder, some onion powder, some black pepper that came out with a really fine grind, which is a bit odd. But I had this set to a coarser grind. So, Italian-y spices. Italianish spices. Well, if that's already pretty well ground, then I don't need to grind it up again. Just mix it with my finger. Let's check on our sauce. It's been bubbling away. It's been bubbling away. The vegetable parts look very... The green pepper has gone from green to that brighter green that happens when you cook green vegetables, and now to the dull sort of canned peas green of like overcooked broccoli, which is a sign that it's getting soft, that we're getting it mushed down, which is definitely what I want. So I'm going to take this opportunity to add our mango, all of it. Mango is very, very ripe, and hopefully soft enough that it'll start to break down in the sauce. We're also going to add my fresh garlic now. You know what I should have done is fried all this stuff in the fat and then added the flour after frying it all off. The roux thickened juice here is getting in the way a bit of what I'm trying to do. That was probably a mistake right at the start. Oh well. Literally physically impossible to go back. Let's add my dry spices. Get them blended in. Ooh boy, all of a sudden it smells very, very different as the garlic and all those dry spices wake up in the heat of the pan. Okay, this guy is going to go... He's going to need a lid. That's the wrong lid. That's the lid. Okay. 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 It's okay. It's all right. It's all right. It's okay. We're going to put him on the back corner. For a bit. Yeah. Get out the pot, Instapot. Get out a flat bottom pan. Flat bottom pan, no oil. Back over here, we've got our leftover pork belly. I hope they bring these back at the store. I would love to play around with these pork belly pieces more often. They are... I was shocked at how easy it was to do. I had a good idea of how it would taste at the end. I was just surprised with how easy it was throughout the whole thing. Save the little end bit. I suppose it's one of those things that the culinary industry hoards more because people don't buy them at home rather than because they... I don't know why people don't buy it. If it was available, it would be my favorite. Yes, okay. All right, I'm just checking on our sauce, which is actually bubbling a little bit too vigorously, but it's bubbling a lot, which suggests that the liquid is coming out of the mango and into the juice, which is what I need it to do. You know what? We're gonna move it again. We're gonna move it to the front burner. Turn the back guy. We're gonna boil. At some point, we're going to need our actual pasta noodles. So I should start boiling water. You know what I could do? It's probably a good idea. We're gonna swap pans, actually. Get this guy. Now, we don't have to develop the flavors nearly as much because we're not using tomato. So we don't have to cook out that raw tomatoiness in the process here, which is nice. We're gonna use this pan. I'm on the wrong angle for all this stuff I was just doing. We can use this pan. This is the Emerald skillet. I really like this pan. It's really well made. I think we're going to do a stir-fry toss of the pasta when we get that far. And it makes me wonder if I should dice up these pork belly pieces into little chunks. Then they can get some beautiful color in the pan here before I chuck everything else in on them. Let's salt our water. As they say, salty as the sea, but that only applies if you're doing fresh pasta. Dried pasta takes on far more salt from the water it's being cooked in, and a generous pinch is plenty. It does not need to be as salty as the sea. You can't see, with the lid on the sauce, you can't see anything that I'm actually cooking today. So far. So stir-fried pasta, not stir-fried noodles, but stir-fried pasta, Italian pasta, is a thing that I only recently discovered. I actually discovered it along with the rediscovery of paneer, because I made a stir-fried pasta with paneer, which was a very interesting combination. And I was amazed with how well Italian pasta held up to being stir-fried. I thought it was just going to immediately stick, because I used literally this pan for it. And I thought it was just going to immediately stick. And I went a little hard on the oil, probably, to ensure that didn't happen. But I don't know that I had to, because also the cheese was in there. Paneer in that same pan, and the paneer didn't stick one bit either. And I think I'm taking that recipe as inspiration here, which means we are going to cut these pork belly pieces into smaller pieces. And we're going to get some crispy color on them over here. I wish I had a clear lid for this pot so I could peek at that sauce as it's developing. Ooh, it's very juicy. It's sticking a bit. Well, it's not sticking a lot. How soft have these guys become? Not as soft as I had thought. Unless that softens up a ton real quick, we're definitely going to have to hit it with the stick blender to get a nice cohesive sauce out of it. But that's not a bad thing. Blended sauces are for sure. You guys couldn't even hardly see it. You guys couldn't even hardly see it. Let's bring it over here so you guys can see it. This is what it looks like right now. It's very chunky. The mango pieces are firm. They are not breaking down the way tomatoes would. So I will keep it going for a bit over here on this burner, because that burner is the hot burner. We'll keep it going for a bit while I assemble the other elements. Boy, is this going to want cheese? Are we going to want cheese on this? If I put the paneer in, then no. But I don't think I want to put the paneer in anymore because now I'm using the pork belly as that sort of element. So do we want some grated cheese over the top of this when we're done? Or some crumbled cheese? Doesn't have to be grated. We have other kinds of cheeses available. Feta. Maybe a little Parmesan. Parmesan would be the go-to. But I don't know what the flavor is going to end up being like when we get to the end, is the thing. The Parmesan has a savory, salty flavor, but with a noticeable like funk. And if you combine it with the wrong flavors, that funk jumps out at you and can make some really off flavors. I don't know instinctively that any of the things I've added thus far are going to give me some funky offness. Here, the pasta measuring method. I'm using fettuccine for this. Do this with your finger, and then fill that opening with pasta, and that's pasta for one. Oops. And that's pasta for one. It does, in fact, give people with bigger hands more pasta. So it's a bit of a cheat. If you have small hands, maybe don't use it if you really want a lot of pasta. I think the logic is supposed to be that people with smaller hands will eat less. But I don't know that that holds up. The some of the hungriest people I know have the smallest hands. Scratch that. The hungriest person I know has enormous hands. But the second hungriest person I know has small hands. So could go both ways. I feel like what's happening to my sauce is that the chunky bits and the liquid bits are separating. The liquid is rising to the top and boiling in a nice sort of steam bath. But then the bottom is becoming so thick that it tries to stick. Because that's what it was doing when I checked on it the first time. There's a lot of loose liquid at the top, and then it's kind of trying to adhere at the bottom. Now, this is a non-stick pan, so it's not doing a good job of adhering, and I can loosen it up pretty easily. But the fact that it's doing that concerns me. Concerns me that I need to tend it more, and I really would like it to sort of simmer away on its own. Oh, okay. At some point, I'm going to have to taste it too, to see if it's coming along and where I wanted to take it. And I think we're going to probably end up doing that after I blast it with the stick blender. I should probably dig that out, so I've got it handy when I need it. Stick blender. Also known as an immersion blender, also known as a hand blender. Probably has other names too. It's one of those devices that I don't use often, but the things that it does are nigh irreplaceable. The things that it does are things that you never knew you needed until you had it, and there was no tool to do it before. Pasta is in the pot. The boiling water will soften it up and it'll sink in, as it is currently doing. I keep looking at ideas to add to this, but I need to know what this is going to taste like, what the mango sauce here is going to taste like, before I know what I can add to it. So I guess we're gonna taste it as is. I guess we're gonna taste it as is. It's not the thickest thing in the world. I'm not sure what to think of that. I'm not sure what to think of that at this stage, at this phase of its development. Let me try that again, but stir it up first, because I think that some of the liquid that I noticed rising to the top is in fact our pork fat. And I think I may have gotten a spoonful that was more pork fat than anything else. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. I was right. That first bite, the first little taster I had was mostly pork fat, which appears to be what's rising to the top as it sits and bruddles away. This needs to be blended together. So we're going to do that. I guess strap in. I'm not doing it on the stove because I don't have an outlet over there. So we're doing it over here. And it's boiling hot. Oh, actually, before I do that, I'm going to add a scoop, 2 scoops of that stuff. And move the meat away from the danger zone. Oop, and turn the temperature down on my noodles before they go, sorry, on my pasta before it goes berserk. Okay. How spinny is this thing? And to avoid excessive spinning, we're putting down something to catch the slips. Okay. Let's see how this works. Pray for me. Okay. Not perfectly smooth. There's actually some chunks still, so I'm going to give it another shot. Oop. Okay. Oop, and I got the cord in the sauce. Okay, we've got the sauce is saucy. Let's bring it back to it's on the countertop too. Stove, back to the heat. Get it stirred in. Yep, aside from the color being like old bananas, it has the consistency of like a marinara sauce now. We did definitely lose that bright orangeness. Ooh, ooh. Boy, if you told me there was tomatoes in that, I would believe you. I'm adding another dribble of that, but I think we're but I think we've hit the mark there. Wow. Boy, wow. Huh. Yeah, it tastes like a tomato sauce, like a marinara sauce, but with like this distinct sort of tropical undertone. It's not jumping out as like sweet, sweet, sweet mango. Fascinating. It's fascinating. I didn't think I did. I was a little, not gonna lie. When I tasted it pre-blending, I didn't think much of it. Post-blending, good stuff. Good stuff. Reminds me a lot of an Italian pasta sauce, like a marinara sauce, but with this interesting tropicalness to it. It's also too thick to simmer anymore. It's immediately starting to try to volcano up, so I'm just going to slap a lid on it and call it. I'm gonna call it good enough. Is the viewer who suggested this here today? I don't know. They would have to speak up in chat if they were. I don't call out lurkers. But we are going to, since the sauce seems like it's right about where I want it, we're gonna start constructing the finished dish. I told you the sauce is going to take the lion's share of the time today. Considering there's only one mango in there, aside from the stick blender part, doing this with a mango when mangoes are cheap is just about as economical as trying to do it with tomatoes when tomatoes are not cheap. Like, I phrased that badly. If you find mangoes cheaper than tomatoes at your local store, this tastes like there's tomato in it. And I can confirm that I put no tomato in there. I, in fact, had tomato paste waiting in the wings just in case I needed it to bring it back into sort of a savory flavor profile. Don't need it. It's got that sort of sharp acidity. I should stop giving all my tasting notes now. Oops. Losing track of my paper towels here. I should stop giving all my tasting notes now and save my tasting notes for the end. But honestly, really surprised by it. I think it will actually go well with Parmesan cheese, considering the flavor we got it at. But I think it would also go well with different kinds of cheeses because of that slight tropicaliness that's in it. That does not need to be boiled to death. I should test one of them. I'm pretty confident that if I overcook Italian pasta, it won't stir fry. I don't know that we need the stir fry element at this point. I think we've got a thing here. And that pasta is ready to go. So don't. If you are lurking, and I know some of you are because there's a number on my screen that says that there's more than than just me here. So, for those of you who are lurking, I appreciate the lurk. I appreciate the views. I appreciate you spending your time here with me, even though you've chosen to remain anonymous. Lurkers are the lifeblood of Twitch, after all. I'm still going to fry up this pork, since I cut it up and I want it to be used properly. So we just have a naked hot pan here. There's enough fat left in the pork belly itself that it will self-lubricate as it crisps up. And in theory, it browns very quickly as well. With the surfaces brown and crisp up very easily. And it is cooked through, so all I need is those surfaces to be crisping up, so that's good. So the American way of serving your spaghetti with sauce is typically to put the pasta on the plate and then spoon up sort of a pile of sauce over the top of it. And the Italian way is to put your sauce in the pan and then put your pasta into the sauce in the pan and cook them together, and then transfer that to your plate. It's a little bit more complicated, which is, I'm sure, why the American style is much simpler. Just because Americans tend to go for more straightforward things, in my experience. Not going to say that's universal. In fact, I've made an American recipe here that was very complex. For this, I kind of want the aesthetic of the pile. With these pork pieces. Turn that off. They've crisped up beautifully and very quickly. We're going to get them completely off the heat because I don't want to burn them. That back burner is off, so no heat there. I guess I'm not doing a toss. I'm just going to serve out the noodles. Sorry, pasta. Pasta and noodles are not the same thing. The differences are pedantic, academic. But I'm choosing to serve it this way because I want to highlight the sauce's appearance. And I think that the sauce won't look as nice or won't be as strikingly different if I mix it into the, I should be doing this over here. If I mix it into the pasta and having it as a pile resting atop the pasta will be better. Better presentation. If I can get this last noodle, come on. Gotcha. And then we pour our boiling water down the drain, even though I did not drain it in the colander, because boiling water sometimes is good for your drains. Helps loosen up stuff that's stuck to the sides of the pipe down there. Okay, and then I definitely have more sauce than I need for myself, but that's fine. This stuff is tasty-licious. It's certainly got a color to it. It's a little bit baby foodish. We ended up putting no parsley into it either, which I said early on I was going to do, but then I just actually forgot about. We're going to use the chopsticks to carefully arrange crispy pork belly in a little heap on the top. Carefully arrange. Careful. And then we need some little green thing on the side to make the plate look fancy. It's a requirement. You can't have a nice plate without some random bit of greenery. Random greenery. Oh, that's strongly flavored parsley. Wow. And I'm going to give us just a little bit of cheese, but not too much. Okay, and there we have it. Mango marinara linguine with crispy pork belly. What's the best angle for this? I'm gonna go take some photographs. It doesn't. I was hoping the sauce would come through a bit more bright orange, but cooking the mango definitely muted the color. Oop. Yeah. It looks a little bit like a jar of baby food. And we're back. We're back to the main event, which is the tasting. I spent all day making a sauce. I'm sure that was super boring for everyone that I spent the whole time just making a sauce, but here we are. This is the sauce. Give it a taste with the noodles. Mmm. It's really amazing how much it tastes like marinara sauce. Like, the first thing that my brain goes to is, you're eating marinara sauce. But then there's this brightness to it. There's this tropical fruitiness that doesn't make it sweet, but it pushes through that marinara flavor and gives you this really interesting twist on it. Right, with some of the crispy pork. The crispy pork is, of course, phenomenally delicious by itself. I had some before. Honestly, it's almost better than when it was fresh out the oven. Mm. The crispy pork elevates it. Those lovely sort of charred edges that it develops in the pan while you're crisping it up. A nice meat flavor, a nice sort of meaty flavor in there. It goes well, actually, it goes really well with the fruity element of the sauce. Although the sauce is actually a pretty delicate flavor. And too much noodle. I think I had a little bit too much noodle in that last bite. Too much noodle kind of loses it. Mm. It's fascinating. See, I for a while there, I thought that using the roux at the beginning was going to make the sauce too thick. Especially when the mango failed to really break down. But after I blended it, it became this perfect texture, this perfect sort of marinara texture. And now I think if I didn't have the roux in there, it wouldn't be thick enough. It would be too soupy. And that there was a bunch of water still trapped in the mango. And because the mango didn't want to break down in the cook, it stayed trapped in there. And then when I blended it, it released it, and it sort of balanced out the liquid levels. Because it's like the consistency of a packaged tomato sauce now. Fascinating. I'm fascinated that this came around to where it is. I thought it was going to be much more dramatically different, and I would have to either be struggling and tweaking to pull the flavor around where I want it to be. But really, it landed all on its own, right where it needs to. Fascinating. Quite the quite the journey. Got a good. It just kind of develops on your palate. You could just you could just shovel this in. The sweetness with the saltiness and the savoriness is really the sort of winning combination. That's just you could just shovel this in. Oh no, I can't see your emote. I think your sub may have just run out. Yes. I think your sub may have just run out. There, Bookwoman. Because the emote's not displaying. Let's see who's. We are going to go see Jen the Human. Well, let me double check quick. Over on the Twitch panel. Oh, there's a whole bunch of people on right now. LaFay is playing Celeste. I think we're gonna go see Jen the Human. Cause it's been a minute. But yeah. Well, I got a little bit of a mad science hair going on. That was a good idea. Thank you, viewer, who shall remain anonymous until you identify yourself. If any of you have fun ideas, hit me up. I probably either here in chat or if you see me in someone else's chat or on Twitter, because I haven't set up any of my other socials yet. At least not the ones linked to the channel, which it's been so long I should have done that by now. Slap myself and get to work. But yeah, so that was fun. That was a really good result, and honestly, a very surprising result for me. I thought it was going to be much more of a challenge, but I think we landed really, really well on it. So I will be back for sure Saturday. Always stay tuned just in case I throw out a random one. Here comes the countdown. So I will see you next time.